Hi, it's Steph, and we're at the Home Depot, and they have a bunch of new perennials and shrubs. So let's go ahead and take a look at the August inventory at the Home Depot. They have some perennial alliums in stock, and this is about the time of year where they're starting to bloom in my garden, in my zone 6, and these are a really beautiful allium. Critters do not like this. So if you have deer and rabbit, because they are part of the onion family, they will leave them alone. And these are just in bud form at this point, and these are all going to open up. Each one of these little buds opens up into a little star-shaped flower, and then this ends up being a little ball, like a sphere type bloom. It has strappy grass-like foliage, so even when it's not in bloom, you get this look of it being like an ornamental grass. This is a Proven Winners type. Now, Proven Winners usually has Serendipity and I'm pretty sure Millennium. This is a 3-gallon container for $24.98. Now, I will tell you that when I bought these alliums, I was able to divide them right out of the container into multiple plants. So if you pay $24.98 for this large container, a 3-gallon or a number 3, you can divide it into a couple of different plants. But this is a really great perennial for your mid to late summer garden. And another really beautiful perennial, the Red Hot Poker. So this one here is by Proven Winners. It's called the Pyromania Hot and Cold. And check out these blooms. Look at this. They get really tall and they have a really pretty, like almost like a gradient color, like an ombre effect. This particular variety starts off like a yellow and then it fades to an orange. They're really striking in the garden. Another plant that also has, this is another perennial with strappy like foliage, so even when it's not in bloom, it looks like an ornamental grass. So this is also a number 3 container, and it is $24.98. And some hardy hibiscus. So this is also the season for hibiscus. Mine is all budded up in my garden. I have the Proven Winners Perfect Storm, and this one looks to be a different variety. It could be evening rose, but we'll check it out in a second. But the hardy hibiscus really likes water, so plant it in a spot that you can give it adequate moisture. It has these really large dinner plate sized blooms. Look, it's bigger than the size of my hand and really tropical looking. And some of the varieties are even pretty because of their foliage. So this one here has a dark foliage, which makes it even more of a contrast in the garden and adds a lot of interest. So this one here is the Proven Winners Summerific Berry Awesome, and it looks like it was a perennial of the year at some point. It's a full sun, part sun, gets to be 48 inches in size. Now these get pretty large, 4 to 5 feet tall and wide minimum, so give them some space. And let's see, it'll tell you generally the size of it, but mine got pretty big. So it says 48 inches tall, give it 54 inch to 60 inch spacing. Hardy in zones 4 through 9 are down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit, and it blooms midsummer through early fall. Now, one thing about these is if you have deer, you will have to spray to protect these buds. So all these buds here, the deer love to eat these. So you can use something like Invisible Fence Deer and Rabbit. That spray, it stinks, but it's really effective, I find, in my garden. And these hibiscus are in a number 3 container for $24.98. My Home Depot also has some of this perennial allium in their house brand containers. So theirs is a little bit less than the Proven Winners at $19.98 for this number 3 size container. They get to be 12 to 15 inches in height. They need 12 to 15 inch spacing, water when dry, hardy to -20 degrees Fahrenheit, and they bloom mid to late summer. There wasn't a spec card inserted in any of these Proven Winners containers for their allium, but the size will be generally the same. A really pretty hibiscus shrub here. This is a Rose of Sharon type shrub, and it's by First Editions. It's called Fiji Hibiscus. Oh, it's got a really pretty bloom, which we'll take a closer look at. And it needs full sun. It has medium to dark green foliage, medium water needs. It gets to be 5 to 8 feet in height and 4 to 7 feet in width. Hardy zones 5 through 8. And this shrub here is a number 3 container for $34.98. Let's look at these pretty blooms. Look at that, really tropical looking. It looks like it's a white with a little bit of light pink veining and a darker pink, almost red throat. And lots of buds to open up. Check out this gorgeous sedum. It's variegated, look at that. and it's all budded up. And this here is a stone crop called Frosted Fire. It's a sedum hybrid. It's perennial. It's for full sun, easy to grow, drought tolerant, and has a clumping habit. Sedums are great if you have, if you have a drought going on, if you want to use less water in your landscape. They don't need a ton of water. In fact, if you do get too much water into your sedums, they start to kind of flop in the center. So you don't want to have too much water. They need a pretty well draining soil that leans a bit dry. So this one here blooms late summer to fall. It gets to be 12 to 15 inches in height and needs 15 to 18 inch spacing. It is hardy to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And let's see how much this one is. This is in the Home Depot house brand container, and it is a number 3 for $19.98. My Home Depot has also received a new shipment of evergreens like Arborvitae, the green giant, and the smaragd, and even the emerald green Arborvitae. They're getting ready for fall planting. These are wonderful options for a living fence or for some screening. Now, the different types of Arborvitae have different type of foliage, so you'll always be able to tell to some degree that what varieties they are. So here is an emerald green smaragd, and you can see that these have a bit of a tighter foliage, and it kind of goes upright, where the green giant right beside it has more of an open type foliage structure, and it's a bit more wispy. Now, my neighbors have a beautiful hedge of these Arborvitae green giant, and we have lots of deer. So the deer do not seem to fuss with these at all. Whereas some of these other varieties, like perhaps the smaragd and even the emerald green, they tend to go after them and then they become misshapen. So something to keep in mind if you are looking to install a living fence of Arborvitae. So these green giant Arborvitaes like full sun. Arborvitaes also really like water. So you want to make sure that you water them well while they're establishing. And if you have a particularly dry season, you want to ensure that you either have irrigation going to them or that you're watering them deeply 1 to 2 times a week during a hot spell. So these are pretty tall. I would say that they're probably about 5 feet tall or so outside of the container. And they're number 7 for $59.98. Actually, they're probably closer to 4 feet, but a really good sized tree to begin a fencing project with. They also have some lily turf, which is considered a ground cover, but it looks like a grass really. And they even start to bloom with these little blue spikes. What I found with lily turf in my garden is that the bunnies, and either bunnies or deer or both, definitely eat them on me. So something you want to consider if you deal with those in your garden. But it is a really low growing, clumping type ground cover that does look pretty. It's just if you have pests, you have to be aware. It says deer resistant, so maybe it is the bunnies that eat it. It says it's drought tolerant, tufted, part sun, and it blooms early to late summer. They get to be 18 to 24 inches in height, need 18-inch spacing, and they're hardy to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. There's one down below that's variegated that's blooming, so I'll show you that. So here is a variegated variety that's actually quite pretty. It almost looks like a variegated carex or carex. And here is the bloom. It's a purple spike, very similar to something like a heuchera bloom. There you go. And here's the tag on that one. And these are $9.98. And some gorgeous Japanese painted fern. I have some of these in my garden. They are absolutely beautiful. They do need a pretty shady spot because otherwise they do start to crisp up. I actually moved mine this year to a spot that is a little bit more shaded, and they're doing wonderful. So this is the variety. It's a Vigoro type container. It is a shade perennial. The type is Regal Red. And let's see how big this one gets. It needs 18 inches for height, and needs 12 to 18 inch spacing, and it is hardy to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, so very hardy. This is a beautiful shade perennial. And in case I didn't mention it, these are $10.98. And they are deer resistant. I can vouch for that because I have deer and they don't seem to touch these at all. And some really beautiful foliage color here with this coral bell. This is a great way to add lots of color to a shade garden through the use of colorful foliage. So this here is the Coral Bells Heuchera Carnival by Vigoro. It is a part sun perennial. It has attractive foliage, and it attracts butterflies when it is in bloom and sends up those bloom stalks. And I'll show them to you. There's still some on the plant here. It is $10.98 for this container, and they bloom early to late spring. They get to be 10 to 12 inches in height, and they need 12 to 14 inch spacing, hardy to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. These do like a moist but well draining soil. I find that mine do a lot better if they have some moisture in the soil. Not soggy, just keep it somewhat moist. And this is what the blooms look like. It sends up these skinny bloom stalks with these little tiny blooms. And then you can cut them off when they're done, down to the base of the plant, and then you just have this tuft of pretty foliage. And some beautiful coneflowers. These are amazing for your mid to late summer garden. Mine are in full bloom at the moment. This was the first one that I started with, the Powwow Wild Berry. So this is the Vigoro brand. The Nature's Nutrients. It's a full sun perennial. Has a beautiful pink bloom. Attracts butterflies. It sure does. Drought tolerant. Coneflowers like a sunny spot with well-draining soil. This container here is $10.98, and this variety, the Powwow Wildberry, blooms midsummer through fall. Gets to be 20 to 24 inches in height and needs 16 to 18 inch spacing, hardy to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. These self-seed prolifically, so I now have a ton of them in my garden, and I don't mind one bit because they are absolutely beautiful. And right beside it, they have a orangey yellow variety that's also making a really pretty contrast with the pink. So let's check those out. And here is that orange type. Really pretty. It's like a melon color. So let's see what variety this is. This is the Coneflower Sombrero Granada Gold. And this is also a full sun perennial. $10.98, has an upright habit, drought tolerant, attracts butterflies. And let's see how big this variety gets. It blooms early to late summer, and it gets to be 18 to 20 inches in height and 18 to 22 inches in width, so for spacing. Hardy to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a real pretty one. This one is also with a tag that says Sombrero Granada Gold, but I was suspect that it was the white Powwow white coneflower because these blooms appear to be white. But I also have a white variety in my garden called White Swan, and they're absolutely gorgeous. The White Swan gets a little bit taller than the Powwow. Really pretty. If you don't have coneflowers in your garden, I highly recommend them. I have a top 5 perennials video, and coneflowers are my #1 favorite. If you're bad about watering your containers or just don't feel like having a lot of maintenance, here's a way that you can have some really pretty and interesting arrangements that don't require a ton of water. Succulents. Look at this. They have a bunch of planters with these little succulent gardens in them, and they're really pretty. I'll show you a couple more. This is a really pretty one, and it is $29.98, and it comes in a bit of a wicker basket. And then there's, look at this one. It has, that just even looks like a little rose in there. Look at that. Beautiful. With all of these different color contrasts. The stems are red with the green foliage. It has a snake plant in the center, or Sansevieria, and then some other foliage plants. This one here is $29.98. This also makes a great housewarming gift because if the person you're giving it to isn't a gardener or might forget to water it, look, it'll still look great. And look at this one. These flowers look yellow, and also they look like blooms, right? The shape with all the petals. Look at this. So really pretty. This is also something I've started to really like, is having succulent arrangements in containers. I actually put a few succulents in a terracotta pot on my back patio, and I'm really enjoying it. This pretty smaller one here is $14.98. Look at that. We have these small ones here in this little whiskey barrel planter or this decorative planter, and these are only $14.98. Look at that. Look at this pretty bee balm or monarda. Really gorgeous pink bloom. This would look really pretty paired with something like rudbeckia. that is yellow look really complementary to one another. Now, bee balm, similar to phlox, needs proper air circulation because this is another plant that's very prone to powdery mildew. It's just a powdery substance that will start appearing on your leaves if your plant is affected. Now, it doesn't harm the plant, but it's very unsightly. So this bee balm here, and bee balm also smells really nice. It's a perennial for full sun. This one is called Be Mine. It gets to be 15 to 18 inches in height, needs 18 to 20 inch in spacing, water when dry, hardy to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and it blooms late spring through summer. Another really beautiful foliage plant. Check this out. It actually does bloom, but the foliage is really pretty because it's variegated. And this is actually a variegated phlox. So this variety is called Garden Phlox Nora Lee. It is a full sun perennial, gets to be 30 to 36 inches in height, needs 24-inch spacing, water when dry, and hardy to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. It blooms mid to late summer. And some more gorgeous coneflowers. These are a beautiful shade of orange, and some of the blooms are really large. Now, it doesn't tell me what shade or what color or variety that this color is, but it almost looks like the adobo orange variety, and it's also full sun perennial. These are 1098, and they all get a similar size. So this one actually gets a bit taller. Midsummer to fall is when it blooms. It gets to be 36 to 48 inches in height, needs 24-inch spacing, and hardy to negative 40, so very hardy. Again, echinacea or coneflower like a well-draining soil in a full sun spot. So for $10.98, these are absolutely gorgeous. Look at that. And like I said, they do self-seed pretty well. So you buy one, and in a couple of years, you'll have quite a few in your garden. And some dark side of the moon Astilbe starting to make the rounds at the garden centers at the box store. I bought one earlier this season with at Lowe's, and now they have them also at Home Depot. Now, the one that I bought was $15.98, and it was about a 1-gallon container. This one is much larger for $19.98, and it is the dark side of the moon Astilbe. What is unique about this Astilbe is not only does it have dark foliage, but it's supposed to be able to tolerate full sun and full shade, which typically Astilbe has been known to be just a shade type perennial. So this one here says that it gets to be 20 to 22 inches in size. So let's see. And that is for its height, and it needs 24-inch spacing. It is hardy in zones 4 through 9 or down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and it blooms midsummer through late summer. And it needs, or you can plant it in full sun to full shade. I have mine planted in a part shade situation, and it is doing really well. But look at this beautiful dark foliage. This Proven Winners container is a 1.5 gallon. It is $19.98. Here's something new that I've also never seen at the box store, Crocosmia. Now these, if you have a hot color palette in your garden with reds, oranges, and yellows, this would be a beautiful addition. Pollinators absolutely love these, especially hummingbirds, not only for their red coloring, but for their shape. If you can see, they're kind of like a trumpet-shaped flower with a deep throat that the hummingbirds like to get into. And it has this really pretty strappy type foliage, very similar looking to, say, an iris. So this Crocosmia here is a full sun perennial. The variety is called Lucifer. It gets to be 36 to 42 inches in height, needs 18-inch spacing, water when dry, hardy to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and it blooms early to late summer. $14.98. This is a great size container. Because this tends to be a bit difficult to divide once it's established, I have a friend who has some in her garden, and she says it's a little bit difficult to dig up. You might want to divide this right out of the container into 2 or 3 clumps so that it has ample space. You start with a smaller clump, give it plenty of room, and then you won't have to divide it for some time. Because there is enough in here, certainly, to divide it out of the container. It's a great way to save money on plants. You buy a bigger container, maybe you spend a little bit up front, but you can divide it into multiple plants afterwards. And some Joe Pieweed, a beautiful native plant. This one has really healthy, pretty looking green foliage and red stems. It's all budded up and getting ready to bloom. And let's see the variety on this one. So this here is the Joe Pieweed Euphoria Ruby. Gets to be 24 to 32 inches in height. It needs 24 to 30 inch spacing, water when dry, hardy to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and it blooms midsummer through fall. $9.98. Bobo Hydrangea, an absolutely beautiful hydrangea, panicle type by Proven Winners. This is also a dwarf or more compact size hydrangea. I have these in my garden and they do really well. They get to be about 2 to 3 feet tall and 3 to 4 feet wide, and they have more of an open type panicle bloom. The Bobo Hydrangea is in a number 3 container for $34.98. They also have the Quickfire Fab, which is an improved variety of the Quickfire Hydrangea, also with really large panicles. This is already turning actually, so when the nights start getting a little bit cooler, they start taking on a little bit of this pink hue to them. Really gorgeous hydrangea. Here are the specs on the Quickfire Fab. It is a panicle type hydrangea, a Proven Winner shrub. And look at that beautiful coloring. So that pink is going to change to this pink here. So it's going to get even more pink as the season goes on. It needs 6+ hours of sun or 4 to 6 hours of sun. So it's a part sun to full sun shrub. Hardy in zones 3 through 8 or down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And they are a good size at 6 to 8 feet tall and 5 to 6 feet wide. Now this one is also early blooming and cold hardy, vibrant color. Quickfire Fab, and the Quickfire Fab is in a number 2 container for $29.98. And Rudbeckia, or Black-Eyed Susan. This is also another really beautiful mid to late summer bloom. This variety is actually a little bit daintier. The blooms are a lot smaller than some of the other varieties. Let's see what this one is called. This variety of Black-Eyed Susan or Rudbeckia is called Little Gold Star. It gets to be 14 to 16 inches in height, needs 14 to 16 inch spacing, water when dry, hardy to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and it blooms midsummer through fall. It's a full sun perennial for $19.98, and this is a number 3 container. And then there's this other gorgeous variety of Rudbeckia. Look at this one. It has a yellow petal as well with some orange around the center and a brown eye. Really beautiful, and these blooms are a lot bigger than the last one we looked at. And this is a Rudbeckia called Mini Beckia. Now I can't find a spec card on this one, but it is $19.98 for a number 3 size container. Well, that brings us to the end of the August inventory at the Home Depot. I hope that you've enjoyed checking out what the store has in stock, and I hope that you can find some of these plants near you. Thanks for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.